Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky hands out medals to Ukraine's Marines on the front line after returning from the G7 summit in Japan.
Italy passes a €2 billion aid package to help businesses and families affected by the devastating floods.
The G7 targets Russian diamonds, but doubts remain over the impact of any ban.
After returning to Ukraine from Japan and Saudi Arabia, President Vladimir Zelensky paid a visit to Marines on the front line. The servicemen and women present were awarded with medals, marking the Day of the Marines.
Від вас все залежить, знайте це. І ми точно усвідомлюємо, хто цю перемогу несе на своїх плечах. Тож бережіть ще раз себе. Дякую за службу. Слава Україні. Служу українському народу, морській піхоті.
Meanwhile, the situation along the Russian border region of Belgorod remains tense. Several villages came under fire on Monday. At least 8 people were injured, according to the region's governor.
Погибших среди мирного населения на сегодняшний день нет. Все необходимые действия со стороны силовых структур, они проводятся. Ждем окончания, завершения контртеррористической операции, которая вчера была.
On Tuesday, the Kremlin said that its armed forces wiped out a group of militants that were dispatched to its southern Belgorod region from Ukraine.
Farmers from Central and Eastern Europe are a long way from home as they protest in Brussels against Ukrainian grain imports. They want the EU to take long-term decisive measures on the issue, which is causing tensions in the region. Last year, the bloc scrapped import duties on Ukrainian agricultural products to support the embattled country. But cheap grain has forced many local farmers out of their own markets.
We need some measures so that the transit will be the transit and not the end of the transport. So we need the grains to leave for the poorer countries, for Africa where it is poor, because we have a lot of grains to sell our own.
The EU struck a deal with 5 member states at the end of April, allowing them to stop selling and storing Ukrainian grain within their territories, while also allocating them financial support of €100 million. But the agreement expires on the 5th of June. Farmers are now demanding additional EU funds as well as stronger measures like enhanced quality control for imports. Eastern European producers say they cannot compete with Ukrainians, as they're not operating under the EU's strict green rules and pesticides directives.
Nem azonos feltétel között termel egy ukrán termelő, és nem azonos feltételek között termel egy Európai Uniós termelő. Olyan mértékű zöld előírások, amik az Unióban kötelezőek, olyan vegyszer használata, ami lehetséges, hogy Ukrajnában megengedett, nálunk nem, régóta.
Farmers presented their demands to the EU's Agriculture Commissioner in Brussels on Tuesday. At the request of Euronews, a Commission spokesperson said that before taking any further steps, they expect all member states to implement the previous agreements and withdraw unilateral import bans, which one country has failed to do so far: Hungary.
For the moment, we are still waiting for the removal of some of the national measures that were introduced before we can follow on the next steps.
Other countries asking for financial aid and facing problems like drought have warned that help to farmers in the east cannot be at the expense of other pressing matters.
It's too early to put a figure on the financial impact of the recent floods that hit central Italy, although damage can be clearly seen everywhere. On Tuesday, Meloni's government passed a €2 billion aid package to help businesses and families that have been affected by the latest extreme weather events. Agriculture is the worst hit sector. Around 10 million plants in Italy's so-called Fruit Valley have been damaged, with vegetable production being heavily affected.
Non c'è un immediato ristoro, le aziende rimarranno in ginocchio e non vogliamo assolutamente evitare quello che è successo nelle Marche, che dopo un anno gran parte delle aziende non hanno ancora ricevuto nulla.
As you can see, water took over the whole area. Emilia-Romagna is one of Italy's richest regions, and the impact of what has happened has raised questions about why funding allocated to counter hydrological instability has never been used. In hard-hit towns, life is slowly going back to normal. Although the heavy rain has stopped for a few days, water level is still high. This town of 2,000 inhabitants near Ravenna was completely evacuated. Firefighters carry local residents in and out of town on a daily basis. For some, this is the first time that we're able to return to their homes to retrieve what they left behind.
Sono entrato per la prima volta oggi in casa mia da giovedì. Sono andato a recuperare quello che potevo. Essere positivi, perché almeno abbiamo salvato la vita.
Many here believe the worst has passed, although they're concerned about the future.
Tutto. Io sono 20 anni che sto a Ravenna, quindi ho ancora un mutuo da pagare, da finire di pagare. Chi lo pagherà adesso? Non lo so.
Local residents and business owners told us they're happy with the government's response to the emergency, but all they ask for is that support is being offered without delay. Giorgia Orlandi for Euronews in Ravenna.
These are the final votes from numerous Turkish embassies and consulates around the world. In places like Italy, the ballot boxes have been closed and sealed. The deadline is approaching for many Turkish voters living abroad as the country is gearing up for the second round of the presidential elections scheduled for next Sunday. In the first round, over 1.7 million voters cast their ballots, and these votes from the Turkish diaspora could prove decisive in determining the victor in the second round. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is currently the front-runner, having secured 49.5% of the votes on the 14th of May, a cushion of almost 5 points over the leader of the opposition coalition, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu. Erdogan has since received the backing of nationalist Sinan Oğan, who garnered 5% of the votes in round one.
%80 of the world's rough diamonds are traded in this small street in the Belgian city of Antwerp. Until now, gems from Russia have escaped EU sanctions, but this could soon change. During last week's G7 summit, the world's most industrialized countries postponed the ban, but pledged to continue work on it. The Antwerp World Diamond Centre warns that sanctions will only work if they are done globally.
If the European Union would decide to do it alone, that would be very dramatic, of course, for Antwerp, because it means that the rest of the world, who doesn't really care about sanctions, that's the reality of things, will keep trading Russian diamonds, so you will make no impact on the Russian economy, zero impact, in fact.
He also warns that the market could shift to countries that are less vigilant about the origin of diamonds and money laundering, which would simply lead to losses in Antwerp. Russia produces 30% of the world's diamonds, almost all through the state-owned Alrosa. Some jewelers like Ilana Brandwain have already switched suppliers. Their customers in G7 countries, including the US, France and Canada, have asked them to do so.
It's very difficult to always know the origin of a polished diamond, but of course I used Russian diamonds, but I know already that the market is much stricter here in Antwerp. All the big jewelry houses, which many of the offices supply here, don't use Russian diamonds because they have requested it for their customers.
For now, the G7 is committed to exploring new technology that would make it possible to trace the origin of diamonds. European Council President Charles Michel has already warned that trade in Russian diamonds will be restricted, but a date is yet to be set.
At the Cannes Film Festival, Tunisian film director Kauter Ben Hania is causing quite the storm. The Academy Award nominee is in the race for the Palme d'Or with her film Four Daughters. Speaking with Euronews, she described how she felt rubbing shoulders with some of the industry's biggest names.
J'étais pas ravie, mais j'étais folle de joie quand on m'a annoncé la sélection en compétition officielle et quand j'ai appris le nom des autres réalisateurs, Ken Loach, Wes Anderson, Wim Wenders. Enfin, voilà, c'est juste fou ce qui m'arrive et je suis très contente d'être là.
Set in the context of the Jasmine Revolution that brought down Tunisian President Ben Ali in 2011, Four Daughters mixes fiction and reality to tell the story of Ulfa, a mother who saw two of her daughters join the Islamic State.
Je trouvais fascinant à quel point l'histoire de Ulfa et ses filles, la petite histoire est liée à la grande histoire de la Tunisie, comment la révolution a affecté leur vie. D'ailleurs, Ulfa, elle le dit à un certain moment, quand il y a eu la révolution, moi aussi, je voulais faire ma révolution, divorcer son mari, partir, voilà, c'est la liberté, voilà.
The film links real testimonies and reenacted scenes involving Ulfa and her two younger daughters with professional actresses. The result, a sensitive telling of a unique tale made possible by a film crew composed mostly of women.
Quand on a commencé le tournage, enfin la préparation, je voulais choisir une équipe féminine, très féminine, et même les hommes qui étaient sur le plateau, je voulais des hommes women-friendly, comme on dit, parce que je savais que j'allais emporter tout le monde dans une confession intime, dans quelque chose de très, à la fois thérapeutique et introspectif, et de très féminin, justement, sur Ulfa, ses filles, leur histoire, mais aussi les comédiennes. C'était très important d'avoir un safe space où tout le monde était dans l'empathie, pas dans le jugement.
21 films are competing for this year's Palme d'Or, which will be awarded on Saturday the 27th of May.